So
Oh shit.
let's jump straight into it.
Probably won't eat. Do anything.
What was the starting point of this new record? Was there a song? What was the catalyst kind of that got the whole process going again?
I don't know. Was there a song? Was it one of your writing trips, perhaps?
First, the first writing trip I went on, I got Break a Keeper down. That was so I went away for a week and I only wrote one song, which is kind of annoying because just all I did was write songs and I only wrote one. But Break a Keeper was one of the first ones. But then also we jammed a song called Hiding Bottles, which is track one of the album. We jammed that like a year before in, I always forget where. Chicago. We were just like jamming it on stage, and the sort of groove of that or whatever started to feel like, oh, okay, we could do all these different things. And we demoed that really early. And yeah, so maybe those two songs are kind of catalysts in different ways, I suppose.
Okay, and in particular with Break a Keeper, which is probably my favorite on the record, did you have the words already immediately?
Yeah, like so I spent like a week just working on that song, like acoustic guitar and vocal, and then we spent like a couple of days on that, and like Kev was just like layering piano idea after piano idea after piano idea, just like sort of kept writing these beautiful little parts that all worked really well together, and it was actually quite quick, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But it did take you a week.
It did take a bit of time to. Yeah, it took. I think it's one of those ones where the chords move a lot, but it's quite subtle how they move. And to be honest, writing the bass parts was probably the hardest bit on that song because like couldn't figure out what the root note was, and it took us ages. Like and then writing a horn arrangement without really. It was quite a confusing song in a way. It was basically more complicated than I realised probably, and yeah, that's always a bit of a dangerous thing when I. Yeah, write things that I don't really understand.
But in terms of the music, then, what's also interesting, I think, listening to this record, is that you developed your sound, but at the same time, kind of stayed very true to what it is that you do. So, how do you balance those two aspects of kind of incorporating new elements, but also kind of not losing sight of who you, the two of you, are musically?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure if we did it. I don't think it was calculated. I think it's more us get whatever was exciting us, like and new things, like new synthesizers or the use of pianos, things like that. Probably, made us like those are probably the things that have perhaps developed because we've got excited about it. But our kind of fundamental sort of personalities and approach to making music. Obviously, you can't change that, so I think that's always going to be at the core of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And Break a Keeper is, I suppose, a very, very personal song. So, Kevin, for you, when you heard it first, what kind of did it make you feel?
Good question. Well, the first time I heard it was the demo, which is quite beautiful and quite the vocals quite fragile on it, and so I was just, as with all the songs that Davie writes, like I just sort of dived in and made me feel all the things. So the demo is and then obviously the album version is different, but that was beautiful to be privy to that early recording.
And Andrew, for you, because music has always been. Music for you always had a lot of catharsis in it, but I think especially so on this record. Was there anything in particular that gave rise to kind of this type of songwriting?
I think perhaps it was just trying to write more honestly, if anything. I guess as you get further and further into making things, I think you have options, and the one option is to sort of round off your edges and become more like, I don't know, to worry too much about how well you'll do, I guess. And you can round off your edges that make you your character essentially, and just kind of become a bit more aim for the skies, stadium sort of vibes, or you can become more yourselves. And I think I was really wary of that writing songs. I was just like, I really don't want to just start writing songs that get worse as we go further. Like, I want to get more detailed, more personal, and more. And yeah, I think Break a Keeper is like, it's way more explicit probably than anything we've done before. And I think I like that mixture of talking really honestly about things. And in the past, perhaps have left gaps for interpretation more than I like perhaps did on this album. But I think honestly, it's just trying to. It was an album that was all about communication and trying to like reach someone who I couldn't get through to anymore, and so it just left me in a place where all I had was all these like honest feelings and thoughts that were sort of almost grieving kind of thoughts, and I was just sort of like, I needed to be honest about them somewhere. And writing songs for me is an easier place to do that than in person with someone.
So, and if this is too personal, then you can just we'll move on. But did she hear the songs?
She hasn't heard them yet, no. But she will. She will. I'm probably going to see her in a few weeks. So yeah, I'm going to go over and probably play it to her.
Because well, what you mentioned, these songs are very close to you. So, does the reaction that people have to these songs then become more important, or like you mentioned, is that out of your mind because you're not focusing on that so much?
I think I think there's a heightened sense of vulnerability to it, but I think you should have that when you write songs. Like, it depends what kind of band you are or whatever, or songwriter you are, but like, for what we're doing, which is trying to talk about difficult, interesting things, I think it's important to feel vulnerable. When an album comes out, you should feel a bit scared and a bit like, oh God, otherwise you're just, if we knew it was going to be like an easy listen and nothing too complicated or difficult or anything, then I don't think we'd be excited by it. So also it's like, when I'm listening back to like even the mixes, we worked so hard on all of that stuff, making all the rounds of mixes that we went through, and then when we finally did listen back to it, or like definitely personally, and I think we've actually spoken about it, so I think it's the same for both of us. But it's like when it comes back, when you listen to it for the first time, you do just go like, it's a meaty, like there's a lot there in that album. There's a lot of stuff there, and I think that's just kind of how we work. I think we're constantly, whether it's musical or lyrical, I think there's always another thing you could just add, and it will add a whole new colour to the song. It's like, it wasn't just one piano part on Breaker, it was 5 layered. It's not just that, it's horns as well, and interesting sort of atmospheric textures beneath that. So I think it's just how we roll. For better or for worse sometimes, because I think it's how we roll.
This might be a difficult question to answer then, but where do these textures come from? Where do does that happen in the studio, or is a lot of that thought out beforehand?
A lot of it's in the demoing.
Okay.
We try and build like the environments for the songs to live in and create textures, and a lot of it comes from just asking each other, well, what does the song need? What can we do, or what do we want it to feel like? And how do you impart that through different, hopefully interesting to us musical sort of ideas?
There's one exception, and it might be my favourite sort of texture. So at the beginning of Crow, that was like the last thing. I remember you and Anthony were like reversed the piano chord, and then just sort of looped that, or sort of slowed that down, right?
That's right, exactly that. I'm so glad we did that.
It's so nice. Just like before you hear anything, it's just like this weird kind of ambient texture. It's just like, I think we do genuinely really care about that, because I think, I don't know, it's like setting a scene, or like it's like the first chapter of a book or something. It's like, and for us, when you're writing songs, that's what's the first thing you hear, and then you hear an acoustic guitar, or then you hear a piano, or then you hear a drum beat. It's like, it's really important. It's how you're going to digest that whole piece of music.
And especially when, I suppose, the content is so personal and kind of weighty, then you want to set that tone right.
Absolutely, it's got to feel right. That there is like, you just know when it's not there, and you know when it's there. Like, you know when it's right, and you know when it's wrong, kind of straight away. Most of our songs have quite a quite a complicated layer of like weird stuff going on at the bottom of the mix.
But one thing I liked, and I think you said this in a different interview about the music then, but is trying to make difficult things sound hopeful in a way.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that that mood doesn't go overboard and you kind of do contain a level of hopefulness?
I think like just the act of performing anything or writing anything is hopeful. So I think if there was no hope, then the album wouldn't exist. So
Fair enough.
and I think the whole point of the album is that it's sort of well, the whole sort of idea behind it was that with the title was this idea of trying to reach someone, and I think that's you know, what we all sort of somewhere within our psyches is what everyone wants, is connection, a sense of feeling belonging to something, and a sense of being seen and heard and like understood. And I think when you make an album, that's a very literal thing that you are doing with throwing this thing into the atmosphere and hoping people connect with it. But yeah, I think for us it's I think the way around that for us is also playing live. That's when, you know, we played Breaker Keeper at this amazing, we played 3 shows, you know, like at those concert halls and stuff, and we played them with an orchestra, played that song with an orchestra. And when we played it, the audience reaction was it was really magical. It didn't feel like a new song, it felt like an old song, and people were just so warm to it. And I think the act of performance of something difficult, you know, it's like when you go and see a play or a film, it's like, it's very rarely just like 2 people sat on the sofa hanging out and drinking beers for an hour. It's like there's a difficult situation and some people have got to overcome it. And I think that's true with life, you know. And yeah, like there's nothing unique really about it. Like there's nothing that unique about what any of those songs is talking about. It's stuff that everyone goes through at different times in their life. So, you know, so.
So that's where the connection then takes place, where people can identify with what
Absolutely
that feeling.
And then when we perform live and bring it to life, the audience literally brings the whole thing alive. And when we're doing that, there's something really powerful about like 1,000 people in a room, all who are there because they like a different song or a different chord progression, or like maybe it's nothing to do with the lyrics, maybe it's nothing to do with the music, maybe it's, you know, maybe they just think Christoph's a handsome guy or something. You have no idea why people are there, but everyone's there, and they're all there for different reasons. And so it's like, you just, yeah, it's just interesting for us being able to enjoy that with all these people, and that brings those songs from ever feeling too difficult into a very manageable space.
That's an interesting thing then, because, well, you mentioned it already, but I can assume that brings with it a little bit of anxiousness when you've made it and nobody's heard it yet. So what have the last couple of days been like for you?
Nice. Just it's out. It's very true though. Like it doesn't. Like it's you go the process in the middle when you're mixing and questioning everything and starting to lose perspective, and then you finish it but no one's heard it, so you still don't have any perspective. Or and then as each song comes out and then as the record comes out, it starts to reveal itself in a different way, and you start to feel like it's done, kind of in a nice way.
And what is it like to have that tangible product, because it's been kind of this concept of the mind for so long?
Pretty weird. It's good weird, but weird. When it's finally just like one little thing, you like can't help but go like, no one will ever know the hours and like the amount of things that has got into this. Like, but it's really beautiful. It's really nice, and yeah, it's just this little. It's so cool that all of that time and all of that thought goes into like such a small thing, really. But
because I believe this time around, in comparison to the second album, you had a lot more time, or you chose to take a lot more time to work on it. So was that by design to kind of allow yourself that breathing room?
It's by necessity, partly. I think we needed to stop touring or stop doing stuff. We've been touring for maybe 5-6 years by the time we had finished Red Earth, so I think it was necessary to take some time. But it didn't take that long before we started wanting to make stuff again. So then it just sort of naturally flowed back out from there.
And in that sense, does that creative does that keep going? So are you writing now or already thinking about new musical ideas, or can you put that on hold now for a while then?
Can't put it on hold, annoyingly. I think it's just natural for us to both be thinking about music and songs and figuring out ways of doing things. I think it's sort of one of those things. It was good to take a break for a bit, but I think now that now we've had it, I think it feels like the bug to create has like kicked in, and I think it's hard in a way. It's harder to write over a longer period of time than it is over a shorter period of time sometimes, because sort of suddenly you can do anything, and that's sometimes not good. And I think there are a lot of toys, like new toys, like synths and drum machines and stuff. And that was a really important part of making the album. But I think that journey of discovery took a bit of time. And yeah, I don't know what we'll do next, but I don't know if we'll need a year and a half break before we do it. Or I don't know.
Okay. Well, writing about kind of something so personal, and you've mentioned in previous interviews about previous records as well that it's quite therapeutic for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did making this record, and this goes for you as well, but did making this record kind of give you a better understanding about concepts like isolation and connection and those kind of ideas that I suppose people struggle with day to day? Does it help kind of writing these songs?
I think so. I think it's just good to know, it's good to talk about things and sort of, if it's difficult and if you're finding communication difficult, it's sort of like admitting it. Or like if you're feeling disconnected and like feeling a bit like, oh man, I'm just staring at my phone all the time. It's like, if you just, the fact that it's that's bigger than just being like, I'm feeling really disconnected from everything and I have no idea why and I don't really want to know why. It's like, no, like, I think this record was like definitely examining the reasons why, like, I personally have become more disconnected and felt a sense of isolation and definitely have been, and my failings to reach someone or my inability to do it has been something that's like had a big effect on me. But I think, like anything, I think if you talk about it, it hopefully gets easier. If you don't, and you just like bottle it up or whatever, it eats away at you. And so, yeah, I don't know if it's any better. I think talking about it is better, but yeah, writing songs, I don't know. I think that's the one thing with this album, is like we've been really careful not to just write really personal things and then not talk about them. We wanted to do both, because I think it's like it would be hypocritical to write songs that meant as much as they do and then not talk about them. And I think that's actually been really good. I think that's been really helpful and like has made it more therapeutic doing promo and stuff like that and feeling.
But at the same time, I suppose that can be quite confronting because, well, for instance, I don't have to go up to people I don't know and talk about very, very deep things. So to final, to round off, what if you, this might be too weird, but what if you learned kind of from going through this whole process then about yourself, maybe about the music that you're making?
That you can polish a turd. No. You just need a very specific type of polish.
Yeah, and a cloth that is of a particular. Yeah.
So.
I think the answer is actually that we'll find. In terms of process, it's probably we'll find out when we make them, whatever we make next, because that's always the thing that you learn. You things that went easy or that worked out well, you'll go, oh, let's do that, or let's not go down that road again because we know where that's going to lead, or whatever. So I think it's hard to know until you are doing again.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's really true.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.